Hello everyone, welcome all of you. Am I audible to you? Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Sir,
So let's continue the session. Yesterday we have covered some part like the classifications of the data. Today we start with the measure of central tendency, and then we study about measure of dispersion, and finally correlation analysis. Okay. So you see Mr. David. Okay. Just a minute, because Mr. Mukesh, I think, about to join. Just wait for a minute. I think he's getting some problem in joining, so let's continue the session now. I share my screen with you. Now this whiteboard is visible to you all, I think so. And just I resize it. I select few colors. Yes. Please you mute your mic. Someone mic is okay. You are not.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, sir. Just a moment. Mr. Mukesh is there, I think.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm here.
Okay, okay, sir.
All the participants, you please keep your microphone off. Please keep your microphone off. There's a noise coming. We can start, sir.
Okay, sir. Thanks.
For the WhatsApp group, I think I have already shared yesterday the WhatsApp group link, uh, and I will also try to share now during the session. You can just keep eyes on the chat box, and other information also I'll share in the chat box. Meanwhile, sir will start the session. Thank you, sir. Over to you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, let's we continue today's session. Let's see. Just a moment. Today we cover measure of center tendency. First, we understand what is measure of center tendency. Because if we have a data, we have a variable, or we have so many values over there. So we want a single value which could represent the whole data. We could not show the data to everyone every time, the whole data. So the value by which we could represent our data is that is called a central tendency. Like you know that the member of parliament, we select a member of parliament which represent our constituency in the uh, in, uh, in parliament. So the similar way we find a number which could better represent our data and the single number. So that is a central tendency, or we have three ways to measure the central tendency. We have three different techniques. So each technique we get some output, or that output we have given some name. So that is one is the mean, one is median, another median, then mode. If we see the mean is aggregate measure, it is an aggregate measure. Or most of you, I think that everybody knows about what is mean, how does it calculate. So it is an aggregate measure. We involve all values when we calculate the mean. We
Sir,
end up, yeah.
can you share the screen, please?
Oh, sorry, I could not again. Are you getting my screen now?
Yeah.
Okay. So mean, if we see the mean is the aggregate measure where we involve all the values. Okay, it is the summation of all the values when divided by the total number of values. So that is the average. Okay. So it is an aggregate measure. Mean is the aggregate measure. If we talk about that median, median is a partition measure. It is a partition measure. We arrange the data in ascending or descending order, and the value of middlemost item is called the median. So we partition the data in two parts, and the 50% or above and the 50% below of that median value. So that is the partition measure. Third is a mode. Mode is a frequency measure. The item which has highest frequency, that value is called the mode. So this is the basic concept behind what is mean, what is median, and what is mode. We will not go in the formula part. Now, if we see the mean, if I giving one data here, that data I am writing in ascending order. This data we have, this value 2 and this value 38 are called extremes. This is the minimum value and this is the maximum value. And these values are called extremes. These are the extremes of data. Okay, 2 and 38 are the extremes of the data. And if we find out the mean of this, so we add on these all and then we divide by the 7. We have the 7 items, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then we get the mean. Okay. If I change this value, minimum, if I change the value of extremes, instead of 2, if I write here 4, instead of 2, if I write here 4, and then I find out the mean will remain same or will change?
Change.
It will
So will change.
It will change, correct. Because it is an aggregate measure, it involves all the value, even extremes are involved here. So it will change if we do any change in the extremes. But what is the median of this data? Can somebody tell me? Median? Median is the value of middlemost term. Okay.
So 15.
15 is our median. Now, if I change instead of 2, I am putting 4. So median is changing or not? Median will change or remain same?
So remain same.
Nice. So median will not change. So what happens? Mean is very sensitive. Mean is very sensitive to extremes. But median is not sensitive to extremes. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay. Similarly, mode is also not sensitive to extreme because mode is the value of highest frequency item. Now, you see one more thing. The mean is always unique value of a data. It will not be two mean of a variable. Okay, there would be a unique mean. There is only one and only one mean of each data. Okay, median would also be unique, but mode may be more than one. No, it's not compulsory the mode would be one. Mode may be bimodal, it may be trimodal. Okay, so not always unique. No? Does that make sense to everyone? Okay. So this thing we have to understand why we have taken this sensitivity to extreme. So because you know that whenever we get some data, there are 3 or 4 types of gangs or some noisiness in the data. Noisiness we always get in the data. So one is our data, we may have some outliers. We may have some missing values also in our data. Does that make sense to you? And what does it mean by the outliers? Can someone say the meaning of outliers?
So these are those values which are outside the line of the, or
Outside?
which are outside the data. Means वो हमारे data को और ज़्यादा distort कर रहे हैं, मतलब उससे अच्छी we cannot get a good prediction. That's why we remove outliers.
Up to some extent, you are right.
Get a good prediction.
Yeah.
So sir, here outlier is 2 and 38 in the given data observation.
Hello.
No, these are the extremes. Extremes
These are
are
the
not.
extreme values.
Hmm?
These are the extreme values that are below the above the range of the data.
Below and our upper. Yeah. Suraj. Okay.
Hello.
Yeah, Suraj.
These are the values that are above the range of the data. It may be extremely high or extremely low value.
You're right up to some extent. You are right. Everybody is up to the mark, right? But if we say the value which are very, very different from the most of the values, which are very different from the most of the values, they are outlier basically. Suppose if we have, because there are some foreign students also, we could take the Indian movie example. So I choose some other example. Suppose in our batch, or in this workshop, the range of age of the persons, what would be? Age of the participants in our workshop. What should be?
That more
20 to
than
50.
20 to 50.
20 to 50. Okay, correct. If someone is having 70 years of age in our workshop, this workshop, it is outliers. He is outlier. Because most of the candidates are between 20 and 50. But the 70 years person is an outlier for this workshop. Does that make sense to everyone? Or the person, suppose the someone is 15 years old only. So he is also outlier in this workshop. Okay. So what happens? First we find out whenever we get the data, we see the skewness of the data. I will explain you about the skewness. Just later on, because when we start the dispersion, I will explain it. First we check the skewness. Generally skewness belongs between -1 to 1. Okay. If the skewness is more than 1 or the less than -1, then it is highly skewed data, or we do some treatment to them. We will tell you later what treatment we provide them. But if the skewness is 0, it is a normal data. Now 0 to 0.5, somebody says -0.5, it is a normal data. If the skewness is more than 0.5 or the less than -0.5, then the data is skewed. In the normal data, there is also a possibility of outliers. There may be outliers, or there may be outliers on the both sides, on the right tail and the left tail. These are the right tail and this is the left tail. But in skewed data, it is positive skewed, so the outliers would be on the right side only, the upper limit. Here you will get the outlier. If the data is negatively skewed, then outlier would be the lower side. Okay. So whenever we work with outlier, so we have two options. First, we see the data. If data is normal, we use the for upper limit of the outlier. We will study these all things later on in detail. Outliers. Upper limit of outlier is mean of the data, then plus, not minus, 3 into standard deviation. We put the value here, or we find out the outlier limit. This point we get here, upper limit of the outlier. Please you mute yourself. So this point, the values which are more than this are called the outliers. Suppose we have got the outlier 50 here. So the value more than 50 are all the outliers. So we give the treatment to these outliers, or what treatment we give, I explain you. Otherwise we have very few observations where the outlier exists. So we remove those observations. If you have only 5%, up to the 5% observations of the total data we have, we could remove those observations. First option is that. Second option for the outliers is we could do the flooring and capping for the outliers. So what does it mean by the flooring and capping? If it is on the right side, then it is called the capping. If it is on the left side outliers, this is the lower limit. So this is called the flooring. So what we do, if we have here 58, so we substitute, instead of 58, we substitute 50. So this value will convert here. It will come here. Okay. So the value which are more than outliers limit, we convert them in an outlier point. So that is called the capping. C-A-P-I-N-G. And suppose there is a value we have written that 20 years. So it is a 14 years boy. So we convert them 14 in 20. So it is called a flooring. Does that make sense to everyone? So in this way, we could remove the outliers, but it is a normal data. Normal data is basically whatever we do is based on mean. Whatever the statistic we further work on that, it's all based on mean in the normal data. So now the mean will change because we have changed these values. Extreme values we have changed. Whatever the extreme values you had, you have changed it. So mean will change. Mean will not remain same as it was earlier. So whenever you do this treatment, you give the treatment of outliers to the normal data, or you again measure the mean. Don't use the previous mean you have measured in your analysis. Does that make sense to everyone? So you use the new mean now.
So how we are going to convert it?
What?
Sir, how means how the flooring and capping points. So can you please explain it?
Okay.
Not able to.
Okay. We have the 58. So instead of 58, we will substitute 50 value in that cell. Does that make sense to you? Suppose you have 47, you have 50, you have 32, and you have 58. So you remove this 58 and you put here 50. Does that make sense to you?
So why?
Because these are the outliers, so it may.
So why we have put 50 over there instead of 50 here?
Because it is the limit we have got here through this formula.
Okay.
Mean plus 3 into standard deviation. Through this we could find out the upper limit of the outlier. If you have to find out the lower limit of the outlier in the normal data, I will explain you this everything later on, the measure of dispersion. You will get better understanding. But I am still I am, because I am telling you this thing all because why the mean is sensitive to extremes. What does it mean? Because when we work with the outliers, the mean will change. Or suppose you have measured the mean at the initial stage before removing the or adjusting the outliers, or you are using the same mean which you have measured earlier.
Hmm. Hmm.
Right? So the now the data has been changed.
Hmm.
So you have to use the new mean.
New.
You have to calculate the mean again. So I am telling this all things. Understand? So
Yes,
for
sir.
the lower limit, we don't have to do much more thing. Just put instead of plus negative sign and 3 into standard deviation. So we will get the lower limit. What is the lower limit of the data? That. And the value which is lower than that lower limit are called the outliers, or we adjust them as a flooring. We do the flooring over there. Does that make sense to everyone? No, we could not use the scatter plot. Basically is used for two variables, two numeric variables. That is a relation plot. Basically scatter plot is a relation plot with two numeric variables, one numeric or the one discrete variables. That is use that. But here we use the box plot. Okay. Or we could use the box plot, or we could use the histogram also. Okay. Why these three? Three I will explain you at the time of dispersion. I will explain you, Mary, why we take these three. Okay. This is the 3 sigma, 4 sigma, 5 sigma, 6 sigma in this way.
Sir, doubt, sir.
Yeah. Ask.
Sir, so this mean which we have calculated on the upper limit outliner and the lower limit outliner,
Yeah.
we should calculate the mean after the outliner, or so after calculating the outliner, or before the calculating outlines.
This mean is before the outlier, because this is the mean at the present data in your raw data, present data in the, then you find out the outlier, and after you have to use the mean somewhere later on, then you again measure the mean. So mean will change. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Can we outlier rule based on the quartiles? Yeah, also, Omkar. When your data is skewed, it is not normal data, it is positive or the negative skewed, then you will use the quartiles. No, won't we have new outliers with newly calculated mean? You will not get any outlier with the new mean. You will not get a.
Sir, if I'm having outlier in my observation, can I use the quantile regression sort of thing?
Yeah, I'm telling you. If you have skewed data, like it is a positive skew, so you will get the outliers on the right hand side, upper side, and then you will do only the capping. So the formula would be different for the skewed data, because the skewed data is mostly based on their median. Okay, the good representation of the skewed data is the median instead of mean. So the good representative, sorry. So what here we do, we have a different formula for the upper limit. Upper limit we will use
For positive,
third quartile into 1.5 into IQR, interquartile range. Or interquartile range, we could write that Q3 minus Q1. Okay, I will explain you later on this thing. Okay. So it is for the upper limit. For the lower limit, if the data is negative skewed, so mostly you will get the outlier on this side. So we have to do the flooring for that. So we have to find out the lower limit, this limit. So for lower limit, you have to use Q1 minus 1.5 into IQR. Does that make sense to everyone now? Ahmad, somebody asked me this thing. Now,
Yes, sir. Quantile regression. Yes.
Quantile. Okay. So does that make sense to you? This we use, but the median will not change. No, the median it was earlier will be the same. Does that make sense to everyone? Here you give the same treatment. You adjust the extreme values with the
Yes.
limit of the outliers, but median will not change. Median will remain same because we have seen there that the median is not sensitive to extremes. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay. So this was all about
Yes,
our measure of central tendency. Now we start the next topic, which is our measure of dispersion.
Hello, sir. You didn't talk about the missing data.
What? Yes, sir.
You didn't talk on the missing data.
Can you write on the chat box? I could better understand. I'm not getting properly. Please write on the chat box.
Missing data.
Missing data. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Missing data. Missing values. There is. Sorry. I have not talked about. I have explained you this. Missing data. What we do, because later on I have to explain this whole thing. But still, I just explain here also. What do with the missing data? Sometimes we have the missing data. If you have the missing data less than 5% observations, so we could remove those observations. But it is in the more observations, then we remove the observations from our data. So our data sample size may be reduced. Okay, it may affect our result. So what we do, we have three. First option is to remove. Second option, we could use some central tendency to fill that missing values. Okay, whatever the missing value, we find out the mean of that column. Please you mute yourself. Meghna, please you mute yourself.
मी वर्कशॉप चालू आहे माझा थोड्या वेळाने प्रवीणदा वर्कशॉप चालू आहे माझा प्रवीणदा
The 5% generally we consider the 5% observations we have, less than 5% observations we have missing values, so we could remove them. If it is more than that, it may affect your result. The sample size may reduce if you remove the observations. So generally we up to this 5% value we consider. And first option, we could use this central tendency measure. If the data is normal, we put the mean place of that. If the data is not normal, it is skewed, then we use the median. Does that make sense to everyone? Or sometimes we use mode also. Most of the values, if there is a very big difference in the highest value, so in this way we could use the mode sometimes, but mostly we use the mean and median as per the data structure, whether it is normal or skewed. Does that make sense to everyone? Third option is another option, that is the business logic. Business logic is very, very important. Sometimes what happens, I give one example for this. We get one example that take example of the car. Car engine failed and we see the run and time. Suppose a car the engine of car failed after running some kilometer and the time from the manufacturing date, time, the duration from the manufacturing date we are considering this. Suppose the car engine failed after 60,000 kilometer, and it is after 7 years. Yeah? And sometimes after 1,20,000 kilometer, or if it is after 12 years. Okay. And 30,000 kilometer, and it is after 4 years. And 1,50,000 kilometer is after 18 years, and 1 lakh kilometer is after 10 years. And there is some figure. We have years, or there is a missing value. This value is missing. So if we calculate the mean of this and we want to fill here, we see what happens. I calculate this mean, just a moment, through my mobile. We calculate this. This is the 60,000 plus 1,20,000 plus 30,000 plus 1,50,000 plus 1 lakh. Okay, what is the mean? I think someone has written there. Just a moment. What is the mean? Somebody can write. 3,60,000. $3,60,000 is the mean. Okay. Mean is how much? Not the 3,60,000 would be the mean. Just a moment. Um, 1,50,000.
Sir, 92,000, sir. 92,000.
Okay. So it is the 92,000 we are getting. I write with a different number. $92,000 kilometers after 18 years. You see, here is the maximum 18 years we see. There is 1,50,000 kilometer, or here is only 92,000 kilometer. Okay. Or there may be, if I say that it is not the 18 years, or if we have another cell which has the missing value next to this, and there is 3 years already given. So here you also fill the 92,000. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yes, sir.
Not really. Not really.
So it is not a good thing if we use the mean of this column. It is not good substitute of the missing value. Okay. For the 3 years, you are also using 92,000, and the 18 years, you are also using 92,000. So what we do at that time, we use the business logic. Business logic is what? We consider some parallel columns also. Here, as you know that we are considering the time also. As per the time, we could write here. We see the similar pattern here. Wherever the missing value you are getting, you see the similar pattern in the same row. what is the pattern over there. As per that pattern, you match that pattern in some other rows, the old data set. If you get that similar pattern somewhere, and you see what is the value there in that column where you have to fill that missing value. And there you may get 3 different values also. If you have a lakhs of observations, millions of observations, so you may get 3 or 4 values which we could put here. Okay, so then what you do, you find out the mode. How many observations are giving us this kilometer, how many are giving this kilometer. So as per that, you could select through the mode that particular.
Sorry, sir.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Please, I'm not too clear with how we arrived at 92 kilometers.
92,000 kilometers.
Yes, 92,000 kilometers.
There you see that we have 18 years in the time column, but
Yes,
we
sir.
have
Yes,
find
sir.
out the mean of this.
Yes, that was 60, sir.
If you find out
60,000. Okay.
and the mean of this all, we add this all and divide by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we got this 92,000. What this value? How we got it? The mean of these all value is 92,000. So we are putting this 92,000 for missing, in the missing cells.
Okay.
So here you see in the one row we have 18 years and another row we have 3 years. So both are the missing. In the both rows you see that there is a run is missing. So you are putting the same value, 92,000 here and 92,000 here.
Yeah. Thank you very much, sir. It's clear.
Okay. So at that moment we use the business logic. Business logic is nothing. We consider the corresponding columns also along with that, and we see the pattern. According to that pattern we fill these values. Does that make sense to everyone? Yeah. We don't have to observe the whole data. Here R has some library which perform this task automatically. Okay. Business logic task will be performed by the R by itself. You don't have to use your mind over there. You just have to command, it will give you the values, 3 or 5 values. Out of that, one you have to select. Okay, there you have to use little bit your mind. In a big data, how you could judge or how could observe the whole data set at a moment if there are 145 columns and 10,000 rows? We could not check the pattern manually. Can we? So we have libraries in R by which we could fill these values using business logic. So this trick we also use in the outliers. Outliers we have 3 options. One is remove the observations if you have observations are less than 5%. Second thing, in the outliers we are using flooring and capping. Here in the missing value we are using measure of central tendency. Okay, and the third option is the same like the business logic. We also use their business logics. Here also we could use the business logic. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay. Parmesh Koju was asking that what we divide with 5 or 6. So how many value you are adding? 5 value you are adding. So you will divide by the 5. You are not adding the 6 value or the 7 value. Okay. Anmol is correct there. Divide with 5. Okay, Parmesh. So how many value you are adding on? Divide by that number only. Eh? Don't be confused in that way. So now we proceed. Is there any doubt, anyone?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay.
No, sir.
Let's proceed to measure of dispersion. Can somebody tell me what is dispersion? What does it mean, dispersion? Can somebody write the?
A measure of spread.
Hmm?
A measure of spread or distribution of data.
It means that how much data has been dispersed from the median, how far data is has been spread away from the median, basically.
Only median, not from mean.
Okay, sir.
You are up to some way you are right. Data is spread away from the mean.
The mean.
Somebody is telling the variation, somebody is telling the dispersed from the center tendency. In the one word, can you explain the dispersion? Measure of spread, correct. Spreadness. Mugli, you are also correct. Scatterness. Both things are correct. Both are correct. Dispersion is having two things. We have two. One is the spreadness. Second is the scatterness. What is spreadness? Spreadness is it is the, according to, we say, as a whole, how the data is spread. Suppose we have a data like I explained you 2, 7, 13, 29, 42, or 73. So if we see the spreadness, so we find out the range, how far the data is spread. Okay. So the first measurement of spreadness is the range. Range is nothing, that is the maximum value minus minimum value. So what would be the range of this data set? 73 minus 2. So its range is 71. 71 is the spreadness, not the scatterness. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay. So it is the whole.
Can you take that again, sir? Please, can you take that again, sir?
What?
With the data available. The data available, sir, you're trying to explain spreadness with the data you showed here.
Yeah. It is between two extreme points we are getting the distance between two extreme points, or maybe two other points also. We could find out the spreadness. The spreadness we could find out through the quartile, interquartile range is also a spreadness. Between 2 points, we are getting that thing, 2 specific points of the data. But scatterness is a different thing. I explain you the scatterness also. So you see, here, I change the color. If you see the difference between 7 and 2 is 5, 13 and 7 is 6, 29 and 13 is 16, 42 and 29 is 13, and it is 31. Does that make sense to everyone? This is the difference between these. And
Yes,
if
sir.
we find out the average of this difference, what it would be? Can somebody do the measure this average of this for me? 5, 6, 16, 13, 31. Can somebody calculate it for me?
17, 61. The average.
Okay, no problem.
Okay.
You could join without camera. No problem. Yeah. Yeah. What is the mean of this?
Oh.
14.2. Okay. So we are getting 14.2, the mean. So if you add on 2 plus 14.2, So it would be 16.2, 2, then 16.2. And then you again add on 14.2 on the 16.2. So it is 30 and 30.4. Okay. Then you again add 14.2. So it is 44.6. Then 58.8. Okay. Then again you add 42. 14.2. What will be? 0, 8, 9 and 4, 13, 5, 6, 7. 73, correct? Okay. Does that make sense to you? So these, how many values are there? There are 6 values, or here you see we have also the 6 values. But here we have used this average scatterness. So now you got the difference between spreadness and the scatterness.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is the scatterness. Scatterness between the consecutive points over a particular measure central tendency. You are using the deviation that is called the scatterness, like a mean deviation, like the standard deviation. These are all scatterness, measure of the scatterness. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, sir.
And this range in the interquartile range and the semi-interquartile range are the measure of spreadness. Does that make sense to everyone now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
No?
Yes, sir.
So a measure of dispersion of two types, measure of spreadness and measure of scatterness. So measure of spreadness, first we read, study, and then we later on we study about the measure of scatterness. Okay. So the range, I will explain you some more thing about the range. Suppose here I have 0, then 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, and 30. This we have our data. And I have one data set here. And one data set here. This is my A data set, and this is my B data set. And I find out the range of A. So what would be the range of A? 10 minus 2. 10 is the extreme value.
8.
And 2 is the 10.
8.
No, so that is a 8.
8.
And the range of B?
8.
8.
That is also 8. 28 minus 20. It is 8. Both are 8. Okay.
Yes.
If I say that there are two companies A and B, both are offering you the offer letter for the job, and both are mentioning the range of their employees' salary. Both are mentioning the range of their employee salary. And it is near about 8 lakhs per annum. Okay. So which company can you consider through this? Which company you should select? The other things are same. Other every aspects of the companies are same. If both are offering you the same amount, same range of the employee salary, though both are mentioning their employee salary are in the range of 8 lakhs and we also telling it is the range of 8 lakhs. So can you analyze something through this data? This figure, if I say the range is 8 and 8, I am not showing you this scale. Without watching this scale, I am giving you only this figure. I am giving you only this figure. Sorry. I am giving you only this figure. You don't look this scale. You just getting this result. Can you go to some conclusion? If I give the range of the two data. We could not do anything. If I am
No,
giving you only the range, if the range is same, we could not say anything. If the range may differ, you could do some site of analyze. You could analyze it, but here we could not. We are unable to analyze. The value are unique. The same value we are getting. Please you mute yourself. Somebody's. So we want some relative measure. Range is a absolute measure. It is a absolute measure. For analysis, for comparison, we require some relative measure. So what relative measure we could use for this range? So always whatever the coefficients we use, they are called relative measure. Okay. So whatever the coefficient we are getting, coefficient of range is a relative measure. So it is the formula of the coefficient of range. If we see maximum minus minimum over maximum plus minimum. You see, whenever we have to measure the correlation, so what we use? We use the coefficient of correlation, Karl-Pearson coefficient of correlation, Spearman rank correlation coefficients, Kendall correlation coefficient. So in this way, we always use the coefficient because we are relatively doing something with two data. Okay, there are two variables we are comparing them. So we are using the coefficients over there. We don't have that. We cannot measure that correlation without coefficient. So here the coefficient, if we measure the coefficient of both the data, you see what will happen. The coefficient of A, coefficient of range of A, what would be? It is 8 over 10, 18, 12, sorry, 8 over 12. 2 plus 10, 12. Okay. So it is 2 by 3, 0 0.66 or 67. And the coefficient of range of B, what it would be? It is 8 over 48. Okay. So what it would be? 1 by 6. So it would be 0 point something, 0 0.167. In this way, we get this. Okay. So this is the coefficient of range. Now the company has given you, instead of range, it has given you the coefficient of range of both the companies, the employee salary. The company has the coefficient of range is 0.67. The company B has the coefficient of range of the salary is 0.167. So here you see in this data, if the coefficient of range is higher, the value of the data is from the lower value side. And low value data we have the low value data. Here you see we are getting the coefficient 0.167. It is the high value data. As far as you go far away from the origin, you will get the low value of coefficient of range. Does that make sense to everyone? So
Yes,
it is
sir.
a high value data. So if the company give you this coefficient of range, both the company. So this would be better to understand. Okay, so which company you will select now? Whose coefficient of range is low? So we will select the company B, because it is the high, this coefficient is from the high value data. Range is same, but the data is from the high value. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yes, sir.
So this, the coefficient is very, very important thing in statistics also. Okay. So now this is all about the range. Now we see next interquartile range. Interquartile range. Interquartile range is Q3 minus Q1. Okay, what is the quartile? I explain you. Somebody if don't know, I explain that thing. This is our minimum value of data, and this is our maximum value of data. In the middle, there is a median, and the 50% data is above this median, the 50% below this median. There is the other point, it is the third quartile, and it is the first quartile. So data between minimum and the first quartile is the 25% data you get here. And the first quartile and the median, you will get the 25%. So here you are getting, sorry, to here you are getting 50%. Here also you are getting 25%. Here also 25% data. And here you are getting 50%. One more thing, minimum value in between the quartile, it is called the whisker. And this is also called the whisker. It is the upper whisker and the lower whisker. And interquartile range is about this. This data, we are talking about this data. Okay. So sometimes we require the interquartile range. It depends when we require the interquartile range. I will explain you later. And the scatterness is here very high, spreadness is very high, or above this third quartile in the maximum value. And here also the spreadness is very high. Then we consider this interquartile range, where the data is dense. That is the interquartile range. We also have the coefficient of interquartile range. That is nothing, that is the same way, Q3 minus Q1 over Q3 plus Q1. And the interpretation is the same. Okay, interpretation is the same. We have another measure, that is semi-interquartile range, or the quartile deviation. Semi-interquartile range, or it is also known as quartile deviation. It is nothing, it is just we are considering only this 25% data of the middlemost. So it is the measurement is Q3 minus Q1 over 2. But the coefficient would be same. Why the coefficient would be same? If you Q3 minus Q1 over 2 over Q3 plus Q1 over 2 upon 2, and 2 will to remove them, and the Q3 minus Q1 over Q3 plus Q1, the coefficient of interquartile range, the coefficient of semi-interquartile range, or the quartile deviation would be same. Does that make sense to everyone? Yeah.
So please repeat this last one, sir.
Repeat this one. Coefficient of interquartile range and the coefficient of semi-interquartile range would be same. Why? Because the semi-interquartile range, we divide the interquartile range by 2. Okay, so we will write in this way in the above side in the numerator. In the denominator, we also write Q3 plus Q1 over 2. 2 and 2 will eliminate to each other, or we will remain the Q3 minus Q1 over Q3 plus Q1. Does that make sense to you now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now it was all about the spadeness. Now we talk about the scatterness. Okay. Average scatterness I have explained you earlier. Now we see some other measure of the scatterness. The statistician have decided why should not we find out the scatterness through some central tendencies. It would be better measure if we measure this scatterness through the central tendencies. So we have various central tendencies. Nikita, please you mute your mic. There is so much noise is coming out of your mic. We have this data. These are the data points. Hypothetically, I have prepared this. So this is our x1. This is our x2, x3, x4. In this way, we have these all data points, you know? And we have last one is the xn. Before xn, we have xn minus 1. In this way, we have all data points. And we have some central tendencies also there. One is the mean, one is median, another is mode. These central tendencies we have. Now what we want to do, we want to find out the average deviation from the central tendency of each data point. So first we take the average deviation from mean. So what we do, just a moment, I am now getting that line. So we see the distance between x bar and x1. Then second time we see the distance between this deviation. We take the measure of this deviation, then the measure of this deviation, and the measure of each point of the data. Okay. Each point of the data, we get the deviation. We have the n points, we will get the n deviation. Does that make sense to everyone? We get the n deviation. And what we do, if you measure this deviation with the symbol negative or positive, whatever you get, because we are measuring that xi minus x bar. So some value may be positive, some value may be negative. If you add on this, you will get always some 0. You will get always summation of this is always equal to 0. So what you do, you convert the negative symbol into positive. Okay. Here what we are doing, we are taking the absolute value xi minus x bar. So this deviation summation, we get some value. And getting the some value, some positive value, we divide it by n. So it is the mean of deviation. Does that make sense to you? So this is called the mean absolute deviation.
Yes.
It is called the mean absolute deviation. Absolute deviation. This is the absolute deviation. Okay. We are taking the absolute value, and then we are divided it by n, so it is the mean of absolute deviation. Does that make sense to everyone? Mean of absolute deviation. Okay, mean of absolute
I
deviation.
have calculated mean absolute deviation. What's the purpose of it?
It is the average deviation of each data point from the central tendency. How the data is deviate from the central tendency. We have a one center point now. Central tendency is what? It is the centroid of the data. Okay. From that center point, the averagely how data is deviated. Actually, the data deviation is different. But average deviation of data is very important. If you know the average deviation of data, then you could decide how much we have to rely on this central tendency. Does that make sense to you? If the average deviation is low, mean absolute deviation is a small value, it means mean is more reliable. If this mean absolute deviation is higher value, means mean is not much reliable. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, sir.
The reliability on your central tendency depends on the deviation. How much do you have to rely on that central tendency? Okay. So this is the through the mean we have taken. We could also take from the we can also take through the median this deviation. Okay. For all values, I am putting only the line between few values only, but we have to all points we have to consider. And here if I write, if I'm taking through the median, this deviation, delta ME, xi minus ME over n. Does that make sense to you? It is also the mean absolute deviation. Mean of absolute deviation per through median, but it is from median. The deviation is taken from median. Okay. Another measure we could also measure through the mode, this deviation. So then we have a different formula. Delta J xi minus j over n. Does that make sense to you everyone? Now, it is also a mean absolute deviation, but through mode. Is it clear?
Because of the number of observations will.
Pawan Lamsan, I know that there is no issue with the descriptive analysis part. We don't have any issue with n. But there in inferential we consider that we could write the small n or capital N here, no problem. Okay. So, but in the inferential perspective, we should consider if it is a sample, then we have to write the small n. For the population, we have to write the capital N. Okay. So here I'm not talking about the population or the sample. Just I'm using the n for understanding purpose. I'm using this capital N. So does that make sense to everyone? Okay. So these are all the mean absolute deviation. In the mean absolute deviation, there are three demerits we have got. First was it was not confirmed that if you write the mean absolute deviation, it does not tell us from which central tendency you have taken it. You have taken the deviation. We could not observe that. If I say the mean absolute deviation is 5.2, some data, then you could not guess from which central tendency I have taken this mean absolute deviation, either from mean, median, or mode. This is the demerit. So about the central tendency. First demerit about the central tendency. Okay. Second point. Second point, if we see, first is that algebraically it is wrong to convert negative in positive in this way. Na? Wrong to use absolute value. Arithmetically it is okay, but algebraically it is not applicable. And the third demerit was it is only unidirectional. There is unidirection. Unidirection, what does it mean by the unidirection? Suppose you have a mean, we are talking about 3 sections of a standard 10th class in a school, and we have average marks. Here is the 45, here is the 62, here is the 57 average marks. These are the mean marks of the class. And we are taking the mean deviation. And that mean deviation we are using suppose the mean deviation here is 5, here is mean deviation is 7, or here mean deviation is 2. So it is only whenever you get the value from this delta ME, you will get the positive value, or can you get the negative value here? Can we get negative value of this? We could not get the negative value. So our deviation, mean absolute deviation, is only unidirectional on the upper side. We could not that. It should be deviation should be in the both sides, just like a pendulum. It should deviate both the side. Does that make sense to you? It is deviating upper side, so it should deviate lower side also. Does that make sense to everyone? So this was the demerit in this mean absolute deviation. Okay. So the statistician has thought that we should do something standardized for this measurement. So they have given the name standard deviation. First demerit, they have used the always with mean. We don't have to use median and mode, always with mean. This deviation is taken always with mean only. This is the first demerit they have removed. Second, for converting the negative into positive, we have another option, which is the if minus 2, we could use 4, and 2 is square, we also have the 4. So we are squaring the deviation. Technique we are using is squaring the deviation. So we get the positive value. Does that make sense to everyone? And third, squaring the deviation, then we find out the mean of the square of deviation, and finally we square root that mean. So when we take the square root, so in the square root symbol, you see always we get the negative and positive. So it is the both direction, upper side and the lower side. So how does the formula, what would be the formula here? Xi minus x bar over n, and the square of this deviation, then we add on this and divide by n, and this is in this way, and this is the plus minus, or is the standard deviation. Does that make sense to everyone? Yeah. Is there any doubt?
No, sir.
Okay. So all the remedies which were found in the mean absolute deviation have been removed here in the standard deviation. So now if you put the standard deviation, then you could go the downward side also, the deviation on the both side. Okay. Does that make sense to you? Variance is the square of standard deviation. Variance is nothing, it is the square of standard deviation. If you want to take the square root, then it is a variance. And if we remove the square, if we take the square of both sides, to a sigma square is equal to sigma xi minus x bar square over n. Variance is the mean of square of deviations. Okay. And there is a coefficient. I will specifically mention the coefficient of SD, which is sigma over mean. And if I talk about the coefficient of variance, which is sigma over mean into 100. Sometimes the person use percentage also. Okay. So that is the difference between, but the sigma would be on the numerator, not the sigma square in the variance. Okay. The significance of variance, Anmol, if we have to judge the consistency of a data, or we could say the stability of the data, how the data is stable, no? How data is stable, how is its consistency, or in the different way, if we measure the variability of the data, which is the opposite of consistency, we always use the coefficient of variance for that purpose. Or sometimes in the general sense, we could use the variance also. But if you have to measure the consistency, then you use the coefficient of variance. If you are generally talking about the variability of the data, then you could use the variance for mentioning the variability of the data. That's okay now. So that is the thing. So it is all about the measure of dispersion. Okay. Is there any doubt in now? Do you have any doubt? What is the spreadness? What is the scatterness? What are the measure of spreadness? What are the measure of scatterness?
No, sir. Everything is clear.
Anything is clear? Okay. Thanks. Now we go to our third part of today, which is standard. Simone, I will explain you standard in the R2. This is the R1 session.
Sir, what is the difference between standard deviation and standard error?
Okay, standard error is something different. I explain you. Suppose we have this population. Okay, or we are taking one sample out of this population. That is a sample S1. Okay, this is the sample S1 we have taken. Randomly we have taken, but I am making here only one circle. I could not make point to point with this S1. Okay, so there we could take many samples. Randomly you could take S2, S3. Okay, this is the population basically. When I am taking this sample and I am measuring the standard error of this sample. Okay. And it doesn't mean that this sample is completely represent the each aspects of this population. Is it completely represent the each characteristic of this population? Can somebody tell me?
No.
No.
So there is something is missing here in data. So what we do, we could take the infinite sample out of the population. We are not taking the total population, or we could take the infinite sample, S2, S3, S4. We have the infinite sample, and we measure the standard deviation of all sample, and the SD of 1 minus S1, the all values we get one column of the deviation beside this, and then another column SD2 minus S2 and SD3 minus S3. In this way, we get this all deviation. This is the deviation from standard deviation. And
So
finally,
what is S1 here over here? It's like SD
S1
minus
is the
S1
this sample values.
Okay, so we have to
We are
subtract
getting the deviation
from
of this sample value. Okay, then we are getting the deviation from that SD. We are getting the SD of this. Sorry, I explain you that. So we are just a moment. What I do?
Thank you.
Because I will explain this later on, because it is a big topic. I will explain it with an example. It would be better. Okay. So if I explain you here without the values, you could not understand the better way. So when we start the inferential analysis, then I will explain you this standard error. Okay, because we have a use of standard error in there in the hypothesis testing. Okay. So it will take very long time if I go to explain here.
No.
With the R, if I explain, it will be better with the data.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you could not understand in the proper way.
It's okay, sir. It's okay, sir.
Okay. So now we see the last part, that is the correlation analysis. We have the various type of correlation. What we consider only the general thing about the correlation analysis. Not go in deep. So just I will tell you, it is the correlation analysis, the bivariate analysis basically. We have the two variables, or generally we take the two numeric variable. We consider the correlation between two numeric variables, the continuous variables. Sometimes we also use one side the discrete and the other side the continuous. So it depends on the situation. So suppose we have two variables like I explain you first. We have a distance and time. Speed is constant here. Speed is constant. We are not changing the speed. If you increase the distance, the time will increase or decrease?
It will increase.
The time will increase if we increase the distance. The speed is constant. Okay. So both in the same direction. If you decrease the distance, the time will decrease or increase? Decrease. So it is the same direction. If the both thing is the same direction, then it is a positive correlation. This correlation is called the positive correlation. Now if we talk about the speed and time. Now distance is constant. If you increase the speed, the time will be taken more or less?
Decrease, sir. Time will be decreased.
Time will decrease. If you increase the speed, the time will decrease to reach somewhere. And if you decrease the speed, the time will
Increase.
increase. So if it is in the opposite direction, one variable is the upward and the other one is the downward, then it is negative correlation. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yes, sir.
So suppose we have a x-axis and the y-axis here. This is my x-axis, this is my origin, and this is my y-axis. And I'm plotting some points of x and y variables. And I'm plotting these points here like this way. So you see, as the x is increasing, y is also increasing. Can you see here? As x is increasing, y is also increasing.
Yes.
So this is a positive correlation. And if these all points lie on this line, this is not scattered. Now they are scattered here. There is a difference. But these all points lie on this line. Suppose I remove these points from here. And I make these points here on this line. All points lie on this line. Okay. So this is also a positive correlation. Okay, the x is increasing, the y is also increasing, but it is the perfect positive correlation.
Perfect positive.
It is a perfect positive. It is all the points are lie on the same line, a unique line. Okay, the perfect positive, the correlation coefficient lies between -1 and 1. So the perfect positive, the value is 1. Whenever you get correlation 1, it means it is the perfect positive correlation. When you get the value -1, that is the perfect negative correlation. So I will explain. Now we have a point like this. You know that here the x is increasing and y is decreasing. So one variable is increasing, other is decreasing. It is the opposite pattern. So it is a negative correlation.
Sir, if all the points lie on that line, then it's going to be perfect negative correlation.
I will explain. If there is a line and these all points lie on this line, then it is perfect negative correlation. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yes.
Yes.
These all points lie on this line. Okay, it is the perfect negative correlation.
Excuse me, sir.
The value is -1. Okay. If we have this type pattern, there is no pattern we are getting here, neither upward or neither downward. There is no trend. So there is no correlation. This is called zero. Zero value we use for that. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yes, sir.
Perfect correlation in reality, it is not possible to get the perfect correlation between the variables. If they are perfectly correlated, then there is a multicollinearity problem arises in the data. Then we could not consider the variables in our predictive modeling, both the variables. Okay. Sometimes we get this sort of the high correlation between many variables in our data analytics. So then we are with the problem of the multicollinearity problem. We have to remove that deficiency from our data. It will not lie outside -1 or 1. The formula is like that. You will not get the value. As you know that the probability is the favorable outcome over the total outcome. You know that. So you could not get the probability more than 1 or less than 0. Can we get? Similarly, in this formula of the correlation, we could not get the value less than -1 or more than -1 or +1. Okay, Raut? It may be some other sort of correlation, but we will not discuss more thing here in the correlation at this part. But later on in the advanced courses, we will discuss the various types of correlation over there. It is the no, there is no disadvantage of negative correlation on the parameter measure. No. Multicollinearity, I will discuss you later on with the predictive analysis. It would be better at the time of that work we do. Okay, so Simone are asking strongly correlated or weakly correlated. I explained that thing. You see, this is our value is -1 correlation value. Here is +1. So here we have 0. Or here we have 0.25. Here we have 0.75. And here we have -0.25. Here we have -0.75. -1 is a perfect negative. Perfect negative correlation. And 0 is a no correlation. And +1 is perfect positive correlation. The value, if you got between 0 and 0.25, so it is a low degree positive correlation. It is called low degree positive correlation. If it is between 0.25 and 0.75, it is moderately positive correlation. Moderately positive correlation. And it is between 0.75 and +1, then it is the high degree positive correlation. Similarly, on the downward, here is the low degree negative. It is the moderately negative. It is the high degree negative. It is clear to you, Simon, now? We'll discuss on correlation later on more things, but here we are not discussing much more. I just explained you to understand the descriptive analysis, what we require, and the bivariate analysis when we do, and what thing we should remember. So I just explained you up to that much. We will go in deep dive, but later on the advanced sections. Advanced part, whenever we study, then we do it. And here, now we see that how to download our program. Yeah, it is Samurai, correct. Correlation is very vast topic. It's not a small one. So I have just explained what we use in the descriptive analysis. Okay. So I explain you how to download R programming in RStudio. You have to first use the RStudio, R programming, download the R programming in your system. How to download the R programming, I explain you. Just you type on the Google search, download R programming. So you will get here, download 4.0.3. It is a new version. R project for the statistical. So you click on that, the cran.r-project.org. So it is, you click on here. I think the most of you have the Windows. So you will get the Windows link here. So you could download from here. You click on here. And then you, sorry, my system is getting some problem. Or you could download somewhere in your folder. Okay. And then you run it. After downloading, you run it and follow the instruction, and it will be installed after some time. And after installing this R, okay, so you just type the download RStudio, and you will get the rstudio.com. Okay, you click on it. It will take only less than a minute. Okay, it's not a big software, it's not a very big software. And the RStudio desktop, you will use this free. This one free, this server is free. So you will use this one, RStudio desktop. And you click on the download. You will go here, and here you click again. So you will get for your window. And it is the RStudio 1.3.1093. You could download it. Okay. So it is the RStudio latest. You could download it. After downloading these two, you will get this sort of symbol. Are you getting this here? My cursor on this symbol R, and this is also R. There are two R. So this is the R programming, and this is the RStudio. Okay. So first I show you the R programming. This is the GUI, graphical user interface. This is the graphical user interface, and it is not interactive. Okay, if you write something, if I write x is equal to 5 and y equal to 7, and I want to know what is the x plus y, so I will get to it. So I'm getting the response here on the same sheet. Okay, it is the R programming, graphical user interface, but we use the RStudio. So I will show you the RStudio. RStudio is this one, the spherical R. If you click, so it is the RStudio. I will take one new script. So when you start, so you will get only 3. Okay, I remove these all things from here so you could better understand. So you will get in this way 3 windows in the RStudio. Your system configuration, you could write there 32-bit. If you have the system 32-bit, you could download the 32-bit. If you have the 64-bit, you could later on you will select that option. When you run it, when you install it, and during the installation you will get that option what you want, 32-bit or the 62-bit, 64-bit. Sorry. Okay. Now, then you select whatever you want. So here you see the three windows. This first window you will get the console window, which we have seen in the GUI also. If here I write x is equal to 5, y is equal to 7, and I want to know x plus y. Sorry, x plus y. X plus y. I'll get this. So this is the console like GUI. But if you write anything in console and when you turn off your RStudio, next day you will not get anything, whatever you have written the script here in the console. So you have a requirement of a script where you could write the script or you could save it. But the next day you could also run that again. So that for that you will select from here. This the R script you will see. Control Shift N also you could use. Here if I write x is equal to 5 and I remove it from the global environment, I will explain you one by one. So it is the x is equal to 5 and y is equal to 7. And I just putting the enter. So I am just writing the script. It is not going in my global environment. What is this global environment? Oh, I have assigned x5 and the y7 value, but it is not in my environment, R environment. So I have to run this, then I could get this in environment. So I will select this, or I could put the cursor somewhere on the same line. I could run it. So I will get the value of x is 5. And again I run it, the value of y is 7. Now whenever I will write the x, I will get the value 5. Whenever I will use the y, I will get the value 7. So it is now in the environment. Now if I want to consider x plus y, what would be? So you will see control enter, I could use the run button also. That is 12. If I write the x minus y, then I will get minus 2. If I want the x into y, so I will get 35. 7 5 is 35. If I want to x divided by y, so I will get something in 0.71. So now the x it has, because the value of x in the environment is 5. And the value of y, the environment is 7. So if I accidentally close this R due to the electricity failure and this all, and suppose I don't save it, I just, when the electricity fail or accidentally the R will shut down, and again I restart RStudio. You see, I have not saved the script. I have not given any name to this script. It is the untitled to remain, but it has been saved up to where I have written. So it is saved in real time. Whatever you write, it's saved. Okay, don't bother about your script has gone. Okay, next time when you run it, you will get it. Does that make sense to everyone? So this is the first window
Yes,
where we write the script, or we could run the script next time also. It will be not here in the environment, but you have to run it. It will again get in the environment. Okay. And first window is the script window. Second window is the console window. In the console window, you will get the result. Whatever you are running here, you will get the result of that here. This is the global environment. Here is the history also. If he is by mistake in the script is lost somewhere, then you could go to the script and select the script from where you want, and you could transfer it to your some bank script. So that is one more option here. Okay. And there is the connections. I will explain you later. And there is the tutorials. You could learn something from here also. Okay. And this the console and the terminal is also there, but terminal work I will explain you later. It is the not is the technical part. And here you will see the files. This folder is Deepajan is here, and in that folder how many files are there. If you remove the files from here, it will remove from your system also. So don't remove the file from here. Okay. So it will remove from your system. It will delete it. So there is a plot option. So whatever, if I make a plot here, if I make a histogram, I make a histogram of something like, so I will get the histogram here, the plots, whatever the plots I could get here. These are the packages which I have installed here in my R. So I will see all the packages what I have in the R, different libraries. Here I could help, take the help if I want to know about the mean. So I will get the syntax of the mean function here. Everything I could get. So that is here I could get. And the viewer is the interactive graph. Okay, I will explain you the interactive graph later on. So it is the time is over now today.
Sir, what is the history over here? History
is the whatever the commands I have written so far, it will show me.
So how long it will be stored? Like since how many days?
It is in the this project. I will explain you tomorrow how to create the project. This project command is here from first to last.
Okay, so
Not
like
the day.
yeah. Just suppose I'm continuously doing on RStudio since 2-3 days. So all 2-3 days is history will be stored.
All history would be there.
Oh, that's great, sir.
From initial you have started the project, whatever the project you have started, it will from first to end history you will get here.
Please, sir, I don't know. Then we can get notes about the central tendencies we have treated already, sir.
The central tendency, what, sir?
Notes. I'm talking about if we can have a brief note on the central tendency.
Brief note of the central tendency. I will
Yes, sir.
share with you. I will share with you. Don't worry.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
I will share.
Excuse me, sir. I have some problem when installing R, sir. RStudio. Please, I show this, sir.
Yeah.
I have some problem.
You have some problem with RStudio.
Yes, sir. There is some error. I will show, sir.
So
Please,
can you explain me the error? Or
Yes, sir,
tomorrow we
please.
could see. Tomorrow we could see the error during installation, or you are working on the RStudio.
After installation, there are some problems, sir. There is some error.
So
Just a minute. Just
you
a
can-
minute. I'll share, sir.
Okay. So you could write on the chatbot the what error you are getting over there, so I could see it. Copy paste the error.
Okay, sir. I will first of all I open this.
Sir, I want to ask one thing.
Yeah.
When I open the RStudio, it takes time, too much time to open it. Sir, why it happens? Can you tell me?
Because you remove your temporary files from your system, so I share my screen with you how to remove the temporary files. When we work on this, because the R Studio and the Python, these all program works on the RAM of your system or your laptop. Okay.
Sir, I have a question.
Just a moment.
Can I share, sir, this file, sir? Can I
Okay,
share?
I give you an access to share the file.
Okay.
First, you see here how to remove the temporary files. When you start %temp%, you write.
Okay, sir.
Here. Okay, and you get this folder. You click this. So these are the temporary files stored on the RAM. So you
I had
select
already
this,
deleted,
Control
sir.
A and delete it. Okay.
I had already deleted.
You have done it. In spite of that,
Yes,
R is
sir.
taking time to
But sir,
open.
still
sir.
after deletion, still there are some files which not going to delete. So how?
Okay, that is the skip those files. Don't problem. No problem. That the program may be running over there and it is being used by your system.
Yeah.
So that's not problem. But after that, if you run the R Studio, then it will it will open. Take a very short time.
Okay, sir.
I will.
Hello, sir. Can I ask the question? Hello.
Yeah.
Sir, my question is whether how to save a project after its completion.
Okay, I will explain you. Tomorrow I will explain these all things. Because the time is over because I have next session from 7.
Sir. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
So, Mr. Mukesh, are you there or not? Mr. Mukesh, I think he's not there. No, he's here, Mr. Mukesh. Mr. Mukesh, I just ping him, so he may come and talk to you. Yes, sir. Are you coming on? Aye. Wait for a while the Mr. Mukesh is just joining us.
Yes, sir.
So someone has some doubt could ask me. Okay, Mr. Mukesh is now there.
Yeah, tell me, please.
Yes, sir. It is over to you now.
Yeah. Anybody has any queries? Anything regarding payment gateway or study material? I think they don't have any queries, sir. We'll be sharing the link of the study material today. Those who have paid participants will get the study.
Yeah, we have shared it. We have shared it, sir.
Okay. Those who have already received, you can just mail us that you have received, just confirmation mail. And the new payment which came today, we receive the link today itself. All right, sir. We can end the session because another team will be waiting for the next.
Okay, sir. Thanks. Thanks, everyone.
Have a nice evening. Bye-bye. See you tomorrow. Tomorrow is very important session. Don't miss it. Connect tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay, sir.
Thanks, everyone.
So thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.